Right. So now the let me thank Meenakshi for helping me in putting together the slides for me. Um, and okay, so uh, in this session, I'm trying to cover some of the areas like impact of COVID on recruitment industry and currently challenges faced by the job seekers, how to get your dream job, and some of the tips that I would like to provide. And also we'll have some questions and answers where if you have any specific questions, we'll go through those. Okay, so impact of COVID, like I don't have to talk more about it. All of you have more or less to some extent uh, been through it. And like what we saw is that in COVID, people have lost jobs, companies stopped recruiting, recruitment agencies stopped their business because of there is no requirement at all, and some of the companies collapsed, some of the companies merged with other companies. So it has been a total shake up. It's a shock for everybody, that we all have experienced firsthand. um, uh, Regardless of which side of the table we have all seen it, and we have been through the difficult challenging times, and still we are having a lot of challenges, and hopefully we'll get over them. But it is a life learning experience for all of us. So it has also changed the recruitment landscape. But some of the industries have emerged. Very few industries have emerged, like medical, logistics, or any business that is to do with remote working. They have thrived during this process. But the technology sector was one of the areas very badly hit, like the hospitality sector. Hospitality sector, in fact, or flights and all, tourism and all, they have been very badly affected. But technology sector is also quite very badly affected as well, because of the uncertainties. Companies didn't hire, companies paused all their requirements, stopped on the budget and things like that. And I have even seen stories like say for example, Wipro, one of the leading global consulting firms. When COVID started in March, around April or May, by that time they had some 20,000 people on the bench. Just because of COVID, a lot of contracts got cancelled, and people who lost jobs overnight. Lost jobs means they didn't actually lose jobs, but their the projects got cancelled, so they were overnight on the bench. And in fact, that was story with big companies like Wipro, but smaller companies, many people lost jobs, and many recruitment companies like they also got collapsed. But thankfully, we, even being a small company, we have survived through COVID, and we are at the moment we are thriving as well. Thankfully, touch wood. So due to COVID, what has happened is that like the entire selection process, recruitment landscape totally got changed. Now everything is happening online. Recruitments are happening, onboarding is happening all remotely. There is no face-to-face contact communication. Sorry, there is no face-to-face meeting. It's all remotely, virtually. People are meeting, attending interviews, and after onboarding, also they are joining the companies uh, virtually from their home or remotely. So this has given into a different kind of challenges, new challenges, where you have to actually to be in the job or even to get into the job, you have to do the way you have been searching your jobs. You have to actually plan it in different ways, and you know uh, have a total altogether different approach to be successful. And in this whole process, I believe the communication is the key. When we are meeting people personally, face to face, we communicate in both ways, both verbal as well as non-verbal. Body languages play a lot of things, but when you are working remotely, the body language is hidden. Many times we don't turn on our videos, we don't know what's going behind the scenes. So it's a communication is very important and key to a lot of the success of your job, the recruitment process, and to satisfy the employers, to build the trust, to win the trust, or to build that credibility. It's all important, and everybody should be consciously trying to communicate quite well during your whole journey in the job. Now, one thing I have seen is that coming out of COVID, there are some jobs we are seeing in the technology sector, but what we are seeing is that employers are, my clients particularly, they are all looking for the best talent at the moment. Best talent, best experience, best skills. That is to say that talent is always in short supply. I hope you understand what I mean. Good talent is always in short supply. So if you have the right kind of talent, you will actually always be in the job, or you will always find the job. So getting to know what is the right talent and getting yourself prepared for it, aspiring for it and dreaming about it and getting ready for it is the key. And Ireland is always, as most of you know, or Ireland is positioning itself in the global market as a knowledge-based economy. I guess you have heard about it or know about it. So knowledge-based economy means it's all about skills, experience, and upskilling, building your knowledge, building your technical capabilities, and all that. So as long as Ireland is promoting that to position themselves in the global economic market, any technology rich person is going to be in jobs, in good jobs. But the challenge there is that you should have the right kind of skill, right kind of technology, right kind of experience, and you should be pitching yourself in the right way in your CV, in your presentations, in your communications, and in the interviews as well. So good news is that market is hot. There are a lot of job opportunities still out there, but bad news is that, or not so good news is that, employers are very choosy. You have to actually demonstrate that in your CV, in your interview, and in the entire selection process, that you are the right candidate for the job. Otherwise, it is not going to work. That is what I have seen. Like, so far we have been seeing that the companies are actually even rejecting candidates on very small shortcomings or shortfalls in the CV. Like, suppose they are looking for a DevOps engineer, for example, and if a candidate and they have listed, say, a chain of skills requirements like Ansible, Terraform, CloudFormation, Artifactory, AppDynamics, CI/CD, DevOps, Kubernetes, Docker, and all that kind of thing. They mentioned the job description, and we are presenting candidates who have got 7 years, 10 years of experience, and if the candidate has not specifically mentioned, say, for example, Ansible on their CV, then without further looking at anything else, or even without cross-checking whether the candidate actually has skill in Ansible or not, the clients are rejecting the CVs. That's mainly happening because they are getting CVs from other sources where the CV is foolproof, like it covers all areas of the requirement. So the key here is that when you are applying for the jobs, you should be actually looking at the job description carefully and put all the skills that are required for the job. That's the key, actually. Otherwise, you are not going to stand out yourself in the market, because there are other people who are doing that and they are getting a edge over yourselves. And we see that, like, being a recruitment agency, we see every day we get loads of CVs for different roles, and we see how the CVs are different from one another and how the CVs compare and which CV stands out. So one key aspect, in fact, there are a lot of things I can talk about here in terms of the CVs. We see CVs like having simple spelling errors, grammatical errors. I mean, that is like, how do you expect when it's a competitive job market, technical market, and if you have got some silly errors like spelling errors and syntactical errors and some important things that should be there are missing, that obviously goes to the bottom of the list. And whoever has the best CV, we recommend to the client. Like, I'll give you an example. I see so many candidates sending their CVs having some maybe 10 years of experience or even 7 years of experience, 5 years of experience. At the top of the CV, after their name, address, phone number, they put their education, or where they did graduation, where they did masters, all that they put at the top. And then after that say that, oh, okay, I have got 7 years of experience in such and such area. So just tell me, I mean, or just think about it. You are getting at that level after 7 years of experience. The employer is going to give you a job based on your degree or based on your experience, based on your skills. So think about it. Like, then in that case, why should you put your education at the top? Why not the actual skills that you have acquired? Why not the actual skills that are relevant for the job that you are applying for? Why not the actual experience that you have gained? That should come at the top. Your education and all that should go to the bottom. Certifications that you might have um, uh, uh, received, or you might have got the certification in some areas that are relevant for the job, they should appear at the top, not your MTech, not your masters. Yes, I agree. If you are a fresher, then yes, you have nothing else to talk about, so you put your education at the top. Even then, for freshers, if you have done internship in some relevant area, that should also still come at the top, because you are getting the job based on your actual experience, skills, not based on your qualification just. Because I have seen, I'll tell you an extreme case. I have seen a person who has got 25 plus years of experience, and in his CV, his high school was at the top, where he did his school. That was at the top. I mean, it was so, uh, frustrating to see. He has got 25 years of experience and selling himself in the job market, but at the top is where he did his high school from. So those kind of things, if you take care, at least in the initial screening, shortlisting process, you'll be getting through. I mean, your CV is actually your face that you are showing to the employer. How well it is written, how carefully it is written, how well it is presented. That is what, when an employer sees it, or when a recruitment agency sees it, when they see your CV, they kind of get a mental impression of what kind of person you are. I'm honestly saying that. Like, if your CV is well laid out, well presented, and it reflects your skills, and if it reflects your experience relevant to the job you are applying for, then it really stands out. And the person who is seeing it, only maybe for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, get a clear picture of what you are. And that is your face. We literally see the face of the person in the CV. And to be honest with you, I typically spend about 30 seconds when I'm scanning a CV. I typically spend about 30 seconds on one CV. And all I do is I search the keywords. And I hope by now you understand or realize that keywords are the key these days. Whatever you talk these days, digital media, and we are all hard pressed with time. So much of information out there to gather, to go through, to follow, to chase, to pursue. We always scan through things, skim through things. We don't read. Like, your CV maybe 3 pages or 5 pages. Nobody reads your CV word by word. People scan through it. People just search for the keywords and get it. And these days, you must have heard about ATS. applicant tracking system. Nearly every company uses ATS to shortlist CVs, to go through the CVs. Like when they get hundreds and hundreds of CVs, the only way they can, somebody literally can scan all those CVs is by using the ATS and by using the Boolean searches. So if your CV is missing the keywords that are required for the job, then obviously you are not getting shortlisted. Even if you have got the right experience, right skills, but it is not written on your CV, you are out. So CV is the first thing I would say. That is your face. That is how you present for any new job. You must have a good CV, laid out CV. It should have everything. And I would even advise to not just have one version of your CV and to apply each and every job, but you should actually read the job requirement, job description for each of the jobs and modify your CV for each and every case to the extent possible, because it is your career. You are looking for the job. It is your dream to aspire that kind of company, to work for that company and to get into that kind of a role. So you need to spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes extra to be thorough with what you are putting in the CV and which CV you are sending. Right. So that is about the CVs. And now, any questions here in terms of CVs?
I have a question actually. I
Yeah,
mean,
go ahead.
usually when we are designing the CV, I only use one layout, and if the job is different, I would change certain things. But my layout would be very straightforward. It would not be visual or very different. But what would you suggest? Like you just said that a process is very automated, and usually they look for keywords. But would you suggest experimenting with it and actually showing your creative self, or just going straight forward?
Okay, so you can be creative with the design of the CV. That gives a visual impact, which is good. But don't use the images. Like if you say to demonstrate skills and things like that, if you put images into the CV, that those images are not read well by the ATS system. So what ATS reads is actual text. Okay, so I'll tell you another example. Where I have seen people are putting their, of course, and these days we see people putting their own photograph on the CVs, which is fine, no problem. But apart from the photograph, which is a picture, they put their name, email address, phone number also as a image. It's a copy and paste of an image into the CV. Okay. Even same way the skills also. I have seen. Suppose I was scanning at one point CVs of CVs of UI UX designers. Okay, graphic designers, for example. So it's they being a graphic designer, they are so creative with all these images and pictures. The whole CV was with multiple pictures only. And when we loaded it to ATS, it didn't read anything, because ATS can read the text fields. And if you are being so super creative and putting so many different things, if somebody is searching out of 100 CVs, based on keywords, maybe your CV is the best, but it doesn't show up in the results. So yes, like put some visuals, put some breathing space into the CV, put some white space also apart from actual writing, and that makes it more readable. And use the text and put all the skills, all the relevant experiences there.
So
Did
what
I?
about the page limit? What do you think? I mean, a lot of people say, 1 to 2 pages for fresh grads, and after that, even like 1 or 2 years of experience. But I spoke to some people who are right now having years of experience, and they say that as your experience develops, then your pages also go over the limit. But what do you think?
Okay. Yes, like here in this case, nothing is right or nothing is wrong. But one thing, even if it is one page CV, it can be a great CV as long as it captures all the keywords. That the keywords, in the sense, I mean, actual the skills, the level of experience that is expected in the job description. That should be reflected well in your CV. It doesn't matter if it is 1 page or 5 pages. That is one thing. And secondly, the area in which we work, we work into niche areas of technology. Our specialization, software consulting services, our specialization is um, all very high-end niche areas of software industry. That is where our clients are. That is where we work with, and we get those requirements. And in that case, we actually do not get a lot of good CVs for the requirements that we are advertising. We get a lot of CVs. When we advertise on LinkedIn, we get lots of CVs. Maybe in some cases, even 50 CVs, 100 CVs within one day. But very few are actually the right kind of CV, right level of experience and all. So our clients happy to see even 5 pages, 10 pages of CV, no problem. Because here, if you can try to see the difference, we are not kind of generalist recruiters. Okay, in where it is generalist recruitment, you should have a very short, concise, to the point CV so that people look at it and don't have to spend much time. But in our case, because we have got specialized we are a specialized recruitment company only in technology area, and we do not get many good CVs for most of the jobs that we are advertising. That's why our jobs also remain open for longer, because we keep searching, and we are also into headhunting. Okay, because we, even if we put an advertisement, we don't get CVs. So what we have to do is we have to contact the passive candidates who are actually not looking for jobs at the moment. We contact them, talk to them, and motivate them to apply many times. In that case, what is required is that even 10 pages CV doesn't matter. We have time to go through that long series as well. And again, we are not reading them word by word. We are searching for the keywords. What kind of companies they've worked, what is the kind of level of experience, what kind of skills they have, whether it is matching 80%, 90% of the required skills or not. So for us, long series work. To answer your question, for us, CV length doesn't matter. Even I would, for the type of requirement we are doing, I am happy with long CVs as well.
So hi Surya, this is Akash here. I just wanted to know, like, how do you distinguish between a good CV and a bad CV? Like, how do you distinguish that this is a good CV and this is a bad CV? On what
Okay.
characteristics you look through, like this is a good CV and this is a bad CV? What things you go through it?
Okay, first of all, visually, few couple of seconds we see, and if it has got grammatical errors, that's the first thing that actually turns me off. Even many people I have seen, my peers also, that turns them off. Like somebody applying for a position for with say 10 years of experience or 5 years of experience, but there are simple grammatical errors, simple spelling errors. Okay, that is something I personally hate myself. And that's one thing. And secondly, a bad CV is the one which is like doesn't have all the skills mentioned for that role. Okay, that CV may be perfectly fine for another role. Okay, but for me, suppose somebody is applying for a test engineer, automation test engineer, for example, and that CV doesn't mention even about Selenium. Okay, then it is not a good CV for me, because Selenium is so common these days. And if somebody is saying that they're automation engineer but they don't know Selenium scripting or Perl scripting, then it is not much good. Or Cucumber scripting, they are the kind of essential things. Okay, and yeah, I mean, layout also matters. How you space it, how you structure your CV. And if you have got like a few points actually I touched upon, maybe just quickly I'll go through some of those. Like if you are applying based on your experience, you should actually highlight your experience at the top part of the CV, not your graduation degree and all. Those kind of things I would say, because you are selling yourself based on your skills and experience, so you should highlight that, not from where you did your graduation or not even from where you did your masters, unless you are a fresher. And if you and always try to make it ATS compliant. ATS compliant means basically ATS does the scanning based on keywords. So focus on the keywords, focus on the job description itself. And if your CV is matching to a large extent to the job description for the job to which you are applying, then that's a good CV.
Yeah, thanks, Surya. That's all.
Yeah. Cheers. Any other questions? And in terms of time also, how we are, Survi, if you can tell me, because I can talk even for another 15-20 minutes, but how you are all placed with time?
We have 15-20 minutes, so we can go over.
Okay.
And then we can just add the questions in between if people have.
Yeah, okay. Okay, no problem. So yeah, so in terms of the few other maybe tips I'll give you. So focus on win. What is win? Win is what's important now. So if you want to stand out yourself in the job market and get into the jobs easily, you analyze the market. What is important now? What is that win factor? Analyze that, and if you can match yourself to that win, what kind of skills are required for it, and if you can upskill yourself, or if you have already the skills experience in that area, that's great. If not, if you can easily upskill yourself, then that is where you can get the edge over others, and you are getting into an area where there is a demand in the market. So upskilling is very important in the technology sector, because technology itself is changing so fast. Every couple of years, the landscape totally changes. And if you have seen, like in last 20 years, how the technology has evolved. I mean, you can see every 4 or 5 years, new developments, new technologies, new skills come up to the market. And if you can, position yourselves to get into those kind of areas, that will be really, you will be in a great career. And so all of us go through so many interviews every now and then, and obviously we are not successful. None of us is successful in all the interviews that we go through. And if you are successful in every interview, then you are very, very lucky, and very, very blessed as well. But then
add that my mom always says that whenever she goes to an interview, she's always successful. I don't know how she does that, but she's never been rejected in her whole career.
Okay. So what do you think she's lucky?
Yeah, she says that it's all in your mind. You have to just know that even before you get the job, you just imagine that you already have the job, and that's how you walk in and you just get it.
Yes, that's a great positive attitude. And as a candidate seeking job, you must be positive. You must be open-minded. That's very true. But just thinking that way will not land you in the job. And you must be lucky to get it. And what I mean by lucky is when you prepare something and there is opportunity for that. When your preparation meets the opportunity, that is where you are, when you are lucky. Okay, it's luck is nothing. I mean, luck is actually you have prepared for something and there is an opportunity. There is a match between your preparation and the opportunity. That is when you are proven to be lucky. And if your friend has been successful in every interview, that means she is very well prepared, both mentally, both in terms of skills, and she has analyzed the market also. And she is applying to the jobs where she is actually going to be successful. That means she has done a good analysis. Okay. And she is applying to the right jobs. She has the right mindset. She is prepared. She has got the skills. So she is 100% successful. Right. So many times what we see that even if we are not suitable for skills we are applying, so obviously it is going to be rejection. It cannot be successful. So that is simple. Even people, I see so many jobs, like when we advertise, we get some maybe 50% of the CVs that are totally irrelevant, or 10%, 20% of CVs have got nothing to do with the job. still we get those CVs. People are applying. So I mean, so that is where it all comes from. Like, you analyze well, you upskill yourself well, you position yourself well, you present yourself well, you write it well in your CV, and you have got the right mindset. That's all you need for success to be in a job. So I'll tell you one small story about my son, actually. I don't know if you know, my son is a pilot. He's with Royal Navy in Britain, British Navy. He's working as a pilot there, and to get into that career, he must have planned and prepared for nearly 15 years. So he had that when he was young, even before getting into probably engineering. He did aerospace engineering, and he did masters in aerospace engineering from England, Bath University. And after that, he's like, at the moment, he's in his dream job. But he did the preparation for that nearly for 15 years. Each step, each stepping stone, each building block, he took, planned thoughtfully, even without our knowledge. He was preparing. He had that mindset. He was building the network in that area. He was talking to the people. He was taking the trainings. It is not just flying. In defense, being a pilot in defense industry is not just about flying. It's about the discipline, about the, what do you call, about the fitness, the physical fitness, about the rigors of the training as a defense personnel. That's common for everybody. In whoever joins defense, they have to go through that minimum criteria of physical fitness and also. So he was preparing for all that. But that is what, like, that's maybe an extreme case. But for any career we choose, we have to be planning out, be thoughtful, and preparing for it. And always,
ask, like, how would we know what our dream job is? Like, initially, how do you plan you do things, you experiment everywhere, but like you said that he spent 15 years knowing that that is it. But how did he know that that was his dream job?
So he was focused, very focused to do. See, like, when he was in the school, he was like doing a lot of physical exercise, like rowing. I don't know how many of you know or have talked about it. It's a most difficult physical exercise, actually, rowing the boat.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it is actually, or if you in the gym, if you see, in a treadmill, you can go easily 15 minutes, no problem. But on a rowing machine, in a gym, more than 1 minute is very difficult. Like, I'm just saying in general, like, 15 minutes of treadmill is easier, but 1 minute of rowing is very difficult, because it actually activates most of the muscles in your body at the same time. So it's like very, very, I have seen myself also, I have tried, and it is very challenging. And my son, he was doing that for building the physical fitness and all. So, and then he has interest in flying. He studied aerospace engineering, 5 years of masters, and then he joined aerospace company, and then he was with the British Navy, Air Force, as an intern for 2 years at the same time while he was studying. And he traveled half of the world also when he was doing that, and went through a lot of exposures through British Army, their army bases, and what is the culture, what is the lifestyle. He went through all that, a lot of touring he did with them, a lot of, he was like, and talking to those kind of people all the time, his friends and his, network he built that way. So, like, it all comes from the focus. And even to the extent that, like, to become a pilot, your eyesight needs to be 100%. Okay. And he was wearing specs. Okay. He had errors, In the eye, he was wearing specs. So to prepare himself at a very young age, he did laser treatment of his eyes, and he became his eyes became 100% all right. And those kind of small things, big things, all that he prepared himself for that. So it is all coming from the determination and all. And when he told us that he's going to taking that career, obviously as parents we said, oh, it's flying and all that kind of thing. Why don't you take some easy job, cozy job, But he was determined. He went for it.
That's very inspiring. I think it's like the whole journey seems to be very inspiring.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, like, and when you make up your mind, actually, it is not going to be tough for you. Actually, it is going to be all very. To others, it might feel so difficult, but to yourself, it will be all easy because it's, as you said, your friend. It is in the mind. Actually, if you have made up in your mind, if
Yeah,
it is in your
she
mind.
wasn't my friend. She's my mom.
Oh, your mom. Okay, okay, and you are driven. You are self-driven for it, and so you are like all that you do to achieve that is actually because you are so motivated about it that it doesn't feel painful at all, even if actually what you are doing is so painful, so difficult, so challenging. It actually feels very easy. So basically, would they say that if you love your job, then you are actually not working. You just do it because you like it. You are not actually working, and you are also like you can put in as many hours as possible, 10 hours, 12 hours.
Yeah,
You
I
don't
know
feel
a
the pain
woman
of it.
like that actually. She is my fitness dance instructor and she's going to be giving a talk next week as well. She is just so dedicated. She's worked with corporates for a while, but then she realized that dancing and fitness is her passion. And she just completely, now she works 7 days a week. She doesn't take any breaks. And she's able to go on forever. Like she has so much energy. She just never stops. So I feel that she's definitely an example of that.
Yeah. So that is because he's actually not working.
Yeah.
I had a question,
Yeah.
Surya. So I've been working for last 3 years and I finished my master's here as well. So for me, I am not actively looking for a job, but I often get emails from recruiters and agencies about headhunting if my profile fits for them, which I'm very welcoming to it, to go through it. So I wanted to ask you from a candidate perspective, if you are getting headhunted, what advantages do you have and how can you leverage that opportunity? I mean, obviously you can ask for better benefits in salaries and compensation, but other than that, is there anything from your side which you would offer if the candidate perfectly fits that role you're looking for?
Yeah, well, we again, like yourself, we see so many people every day when we are headhunting. We come across so many people. They say, "No, I am happy with my job," or "I'm not looking for a change at the moment." You are not the only. I mean, I would say you when we do headhunting. Out of say 10 people, we actually find 2 or 3 people who are actually interested in considering the opportunity, and 7 or 8 people they say that no, we are not interested, we are happy. So you fall into that kind of say 80% category, not in the 20% category. Okay, so it is up to you. If you are actually serious about it, yes, headhunters are coming to you and that is their job, and that is also, and sometimes you end up with a great opportunity, great career, much better than what you are doing now.
Yeah, I mean, that's correct, but what are the advantages over it? I mean, from a candidate perspective, do you have any competitive advantage if you're headhunted, and can you ask for any better benefits since you're not applying, or how does it work?
Well, no, I would say there is no better benefits or anything because, uh, again, sorry, it could be if you are in a very rare skill, yes, you can command some things. You can say, though, sorry, I want more money, or I want this benefit, or I want flexibility, or I want 50% work from home. if you are in a niche area that there are not many people with your skills in the market, then yes. But if you are a generalist, or if you are a kind of a there is no much of demand supply gap in area which you are expertising in, then there is no much benefit, I would say.
Okay.
Okay, you'll be one of many. So think about it. If you are one of the many, then there is no much benefit. But if you are one of the few, then yes, you can command things.
Alright.
You decide yourself in which sector you fall in. Like you are one of the many in the market, or one of the few. Whether you are looking for a job change or not, that's irrelevant. That doesn't matter. But your skills, are they like very few, part of the very few? Then yes, you can command things in the you are in a better negotiating side.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
I also want to follow up on that actually. So just like the way she was mentioning about the benefits and salaries. So maybe I think, how do we go about it professionally? Because I personally feel I just feel that if I'm committed to one thing, I kind of feel, I don't feel very comfortable in looking further. I mean, even if someone is headhunting me, I don't feel comfortable in going forward with it, because I'm already in a job and I'm committed to my employer. But I think it's different, and everybody, if you want to grow, you have to have the mindset of being open. But how do we go about it professionally?
Well, I mean, if you don't want to move out of your current job, that's end of the story. You don't want to move out. But if you want to move out of your current comfort zone, then just go with the recruiter. Follow the recruiter. Whatever they say, they will guide you through the process. Is that your is that kind of a answer you're expecting, or I was acting smart?
No, actually, I don't know. The thing is that when you are in a job, right? For example, like she's worked in the company for 3 years and she's happy in the job, I suppose. But the thing is, like, she's getting these opportunities from people, right? And then sometimes you would have in your mind, okay, and now what next? Maybe I need to grow out of it, but I'm happy in the job I have and I'm committed to my job. So isn't it a bit, how would you mentally prepare yourself to go forward with a new opportunity?
Well,
I think
first,
I can answer that. I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
honestly speaking, I mean, I know you graduated and started the job, so I had the same kind of experiences as you're speaking for. But once you grow in a company or your team or your work, there comes a point where you will realize yourself that, for example, there is no more growth opportunity in the team, so you look for internal transfers or other easier opportunities, or go approach agencies or recruiters. But if even that's not the right path for you, or there are visa restrictions, because I believe most of our audience is from India as well, then people who's approaching you will be the most easiest part. So I mean, the commitment part and the loyalty part is aside, but it is your career at the end. So you have to look at the pros and cons of both. The company is getting benefited by your skill, but even you should get benefited in terms of career growth, I'll say. I mean, I'm not trying to be disloyal, but I am looking for myself out, which I think everyone should do.
Exactly. That's what I was looking for. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, ultimately it is your career and you have to make a decision. If you are, for whatever reason, if you want to make a change, then there are opportunities there. And if you don't want to make a change, that's fine. Like, I'll give you an example. My wife, I'm a recruitment agency, and my wife is working with Fidelity Investments at the moment. She's a manager there for 7 years, and I get so many opportunities for her while I'm being a recruitment agency through my clients. But she's loyal. She's like 7 years. She's happy with her job. I say, okay, you come and try for a change. She has never ever shown her interest. So I mean, this is entirely your call. And if you want to change for whatever reason, there are we will make it possible for you. Like, obviously, if we get a similar requirement to fit you in. And being loyal, disloyal, I would say that doesn't matter much these days. I mean, yes, I mean, loyalty factor is there, but ultimately you have to also see your career growth. And if you think that you are stuck, even if the company is great and all, there is no opportunity for your growth, career growth, then there's nothing wrong in looking uh, for a change. And I would say, if your employer, they will also appreciate that. If they cannot give you the right opportunity that you are looking for, then they should also, make it easy for you to help you get into your next career.
Surya, just a follow-up question on that. What you said, I completely agree with, and you explained it very well for everyone in the crowd. What I'm trying to understand is, for example, I switch a job and I am not happy with that new job, and I get another offer or something, and I am thinking of moving. So, like, isn't that not a good thing to show on your resume? Like, you are having only 2 or 3 months of a job in certain company, and then you're looking for change. So is that a criteria you look in the resume, or does it impact you negatively, or you just go with the experience? Because the
Well,
experience keeps adding, so there's no loss per se. It's just the number of, the titles you hold. In 2 years you have changed like 3 jobs, so that just says that you're not where you are, or you're not comfortable with what you want.
well, if it is once or twice, say in 5 years you have gone into that kind of a situation once or twice, and after 3 months or 2 months you have to change your job, that's okay. But if it is very regular, then yes, when we see the CV, we are concerned. If it is very, very regular, every 2-3 months, somebody has changed job, there may be something fundamentally wrong, and that can be concerning for the employer.
Okay.
But
There is
again,
no minimum. Is there
well,
a
there is
minimum
nothing.
duration?
See, as I said again, if you are one in few,
Yeah.
nothing really matters. I mean, if you have a very, very niche skill, okay, and we as recruiters, suppose I as a recruiter have been struggling to find a person like you, but then I found you, and then I see that in your CV there are such things there. You have at some point you have changed jobs very frequently. That won't bother me. I'll still be happy to submit you, justify your case to the employer. But if you are one in many, then I would not look at your CV.
Okay.
So it all depends on which sector of the market you are in. That's the main thing. What is the demand supply gap there? How you have positioned yourself? What kind of very niche skills you have? Okay, and if that is, or if you are in the emerging technologies area. So, for example, DevOps or automation is always ever growing in demand. Okay, or DevOps is now very new area, or some new emerging things, new technologies like say um, um, you know something. There are so many like that. So if you are into new trending technologies, then you are in a better place. Okay, even if you have a few changes and few kind of discrepancies in your CV like that, that won't bother. But if you are like in traditional technologies and all, so many changes, then your CV will be down somewhere.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Anybody wanting to ask any questions?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
So, when it comes to core engineering, such as mechanical or electrical, are there any opportunities outside India?
Well, there are opportunities outside India, yes, but in Ireland, because we are specializing in Ireland and UK, and we are actually specializing in technology area. Technology means everything we do personally in our company is related to software engineering. I won't have much insight into engineering jobs, But all I can say is that yes, if you are asking whether there are opportunities, yes, there are opportunities. But if you are asking how easy it is, it's particularly for Ireland or UK, it is not easy, because demand supply gap is low in Ireland, for example, for engineering jobs. There are not many engineering companies here, but there are hundreds of software companies. So there is definitely a skills gap for software industry, and that is why we see so many people from India coming every year to take different roles in software companies. Fortune 500 companies or all these digital companies, but not many people come from India for engineering roles.
So
But
I have
I
a
think, I
follow-up
guess,
question.
yeah.
So only software companies are dominating these days when it comes to engineering, or are the core companies losing the competition against some software companies?
Well, if you see, a lot of engineers are converted to software engineers, and and that is like, I personally myself have been converted like that 25 years back, and I think that same trend is following until now. So even people, even though they want to be software engineers, they still join into mainstream engineering, and then they look for jobs in software engineering also. So you know yes, because uh, in whatever way, we are all driven by the demand supply gap, and we are looking to get into the area where there is demand, where we can find jobs easily. And in software sector, jobs are more, and then all that in software engineering requires is a basic degree, and then some, if you take some training in software engineering, you find your career. And if that works for you, that's it. Like, that is how people are there. I mean, I don't know, did I answer your question?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
no problem.
Anybody else wanting to ask a few last questions? I think there's some in the chat. Where is it? Yeah, how much does an MBA help in technical management industries?
Can you please repeat that?
Sorry, how much does an MBA help in technical management industries?
So basically, the question is around what is the kind of demand for MBA in a technology sector?
Yeah.
I would say in Ireland particularly, or maybe in the UK, not many.
Not in the
So,
US and other places.
like maybe in India, but I was telling you like earlier that it's a knowledge-based economy. Okay. So knowledge-based means actual skills, in the sense technical skills, niche skills, or that kind of thing. So I would say, MBA is more of a generalist than actually
The business
knowledge-based.
analyst, like for companies like McKinsey and Bain and BCG, I think they do require an MBA, or would they be okay with just?
Yeah, they do take everybody actually. Like PwC or Deloitte, or those kind of companies, the KPMG, they hire nearly 1,000 people, each of them, every year, fresh graduates.
But we are
So
talking about McKinsey, Bain, and BCG. Like,
McKinsey, you're talking about the consulting company, right?
yeah, McKinsey. I think McKinsey, Bain, BCG are different from Deloitte, PwC, EY, and KPMG. I mean, they do have consulting, but I think McKinsey, Bain, BCG are more consulting, and Deloitte and all those are more tax and accounting.
Mhm. So what they probably do is that they take MBAs and give them a lot of training, and then they deploy them with the clients, right?
Like
Yeah. So yes. Can I ask again what was the question?
the question was mainly that how does MBA help in the technical industry, and how can it give you more leverage in terms of benefits and
Okay, so McKinsey can be exception, but in general, in technology sector, companies would prefer people with technology background and less with MBA background. But like if they are given a choice uh, between a person who has got technical skills and wants to become manager, or a MBA without much of technical skills and wants to become a manager, they would rather prefer a person with the technical skills.
oh, okay, okay, so that does make sense. But what about having to do a little bit switch from, like, you have the technical background, but you want to do a switch to more management roles? Would
Mhm.
that help in that case, or do you think it would still be not relevant because you have a technical background?
Okay, I would say for Ireland, you are better off being hands-on technical than being a manager. You will have more assured career, okay, and even salary and all are better. With being technical people, your salaries are always better than just managers. Like some technical managers, yes, but just basic managers without much technical skills, they are less required. I would say let us make it plain and simple. They are less in demand.
So do you
But
think that in the future also we wouldn't have much demand for more management related work?
well, this is like again coming back to, it's a knowledge based economy. So in here, technical skills are more required than managerial skills.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think it
Yeah.
makes. Anybody else wanting to ask anything?
But can I ask, like, from your from university, like say UCD and all, UCD have all the streams like engineering, management, and everything. So is there a kind of a statistical analysis as to how many, out of how many engineers, how many get placed within first year, and out of how many management graduates, how many get placed within the first year? If you can have that statistics for last 3 years, maybe that will tell you a trend that will give you the trend.
Thanks.
If you can, do a bit of research to get into those figures, that will tell, the figures will tell themselves.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. Anybody wanting to ask anything? One last question will take now. Just don't be shy, just say it.
Yeah, don't have to be shy. If I don't know the answer, I'll say no. And
Just go ahead, guys. This is an opportunity. This is so important because no matter where you are in your career, you're always thinking how I go ahead. So I'm sure everybody has some question. No? Okay, then I think we'll end the session now. And thank you so much,
so,
Sonia, for coming and
yeah,
giving.
yeah, no problem. Thank you very much for patient hearing. I think I overran quite a bit,
No, it's absolutely fine. It's absolutely
and I hope I could, make it useful to you all, and um, and um, and all the best to you. Enjoy rest of Sunday, the rest of your sessions, and we'll catch up sometime.
Yeah, I think I'll drop the LinkedIn, I'll send it's just Surya Patra. I think I'll just look the LinkedIn up and just send the link very quickly.
Yeah, LinkedIn as well as my company also. And just to tell you guys, if you look at our website, so our website is softest.co. Maybe I'll put it in the chat here. Softest.co. If you look at our website, there are a lot of useful information, publications, and some videos also to help you prepare yourselves for the interviews, how to prepare for video interviews, see how to write CVs, how to write ATS compliant CVs. We have
Yeah.
got quite a lot of
Yeah,
useful
surprise.
resources for you if you want to use them. I'll just put it here. Yeah, that's the one. And if you, and I think Survi will share my LinkedIn there, and my company company page is also like, you can get it from my website, the link that I gave you, that has got links to our company LinkedIn page and Instagram, Twitter, and all. So we nearly every day we publish something useful for the recruitment industry. If you want to keep track of it and stay in touch with us, you are most welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Just